Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Mailbag, the all-mailbag show here on Collider Video, where all we do is take your mailbag questions. My name is John Campia. I am the senior producer over here at Collider Video, and Mailbag is a very informal, laid-back kind of fireside chat, if you will, for things around here at Collider Video. As you can see from the chaos behind me, this has been a chaotic and crazy week here at Collider Video. We've had a lot of stuff going on here. Now, before I tell you about all the stuff that we've had going on, I want to remind you that if you have a question or a comment that you would like addressed on the show, either here on Mailbag on the weekends or on Movie Talk Monday through Friday, you can just email your question anytime to collidervideo@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to see if we can get your question on the air. Now, before we get to the questions, this has been a crazy week around here at Collider Video. We, of course, had 5 episodes of Movie Talk that we did. We, of course, had Heroes. We had Jedi Council. We now have Mailbag that we're doing as well, meetings and scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, we did all of our casting this week for our new Collider Recap Network. Now, for those of you who maybe didn't hear, we are getting into TV. I know a lot of people for a long time wanted us to do stuff with TV, and now is the time. We're going to be doing it now, and we're going to be starting it off with 6 recap shows for The Blacklist, Arrow, Flash, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Supergirl, and Empire. That's what we're starting with. We're going to start with those and see if you guys like it, see if you guys tune in. And anyway, we need 4 people on each of those shows, and so we had to do a lot of casting. We did like 8, 9, 10 hours of casting on Saturday. We were casting Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday till like 8 o'clock at night every night. Me, Dennis, and Wendy were in here doing the casting. We interviewed a lot of people. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications for the spots, and we think we have come up with 6 great teams that I cannot wait to introduce to you guys, which is going to be pretty cool. But also for me, it's also been a kind of a busy week. I don't know if a lot of you know, but for a couple of years now, I've been talking about this book that I've been working on. It's a novel called The Pride that I had been working on for a long time. And you guys know I've mentioned it here and there for years. And this past year, I really buckled down and started working on developing it. And, it's just about done. It's pretty much finished. There's a lot of things I still need to do, like get story editors, copy editors, designers, things like that. All these things cost money. So what I've done is I have launched my first ever Kickstarter campaign for my new book. How do I tell you? My new book. This isn't the official cover, by the way, that you're seeing here. This is not the official cover, but this is just kind of an advanced piece of promo art. But it is called The Pride, and it's my new novel, my first novel. And if you go over to my Facebook page or my Twitter page, you'll find links there on how you can get to my Kickstarter page and help me get my first novel totally polished and finished and out to everybody. And thanks a lot for all your support. And thanks a lot, too, for all the encouragement you guys have given me over the last couple of years as I've been working on this. Very, very appreciated. Anyway, all that out of the way, let's get down to the real stuff here. Let's get to the mailbag questions. Oh, and sorry, one more thing. Because it is the long weekend, I am going to do something that I don't normally do, and I hope you guys will be okay with it. I am actually going to go away for the weekend. I'm actually going to go away. So me and my wife, we're going to hop in the car and split out of town. And so there will be, because of the long holiday weekend, there will be no mailbag on Sunday. Last weekend, there was also no mailbag. Sorry about that. I just came under the weather on the Sunday, and I could not get one done. So my apologies for that. This one is planned. We're not going to do one tomorrow. This one's planned, but rest assured, there will be 2 mailbags next weekend. Now, some people asked me when I got sick last Saturday, I wasn't feeling so good. Some people have asked, well, hey, why doesn't somebody else come in and do it? It's a little more complicated than that, because to actually run the software to record what we're doing, to write up all the notes, and then to edit and put everything online, there's not really anybody else on the crew other than Dennis who knows how to do this stuff, especially solo on our crew right now. And so that it's not really a feasible thing. And Dennis does not want to work on weekends, and who can blame him? And nobody else really wants to work on weekends either. So anyway, this Sunday, no mailbag on tomorrow, but we are getting this one to you today. Okay, so now let's get to the real stuff. Let's get to the mailbag questions. And the first question today comes to us from David Ribeiro, who writes, I love your show and watch it religiously. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate that. After seeing Agent 47 and the new images for Assassin's Creed, my question is, do video games with an expanded universe and multiple protagonists, like Assassin's Creed, that have novels and comics, stand a better chance for a good adaptation to hit the big screen than games that have a single protagonist over multiple games, like Hitman? Or is it just that the story needs to be more suited to adapt to a traditional movie plot rather than be a cinematic game in and of itself? Well, thanks a lot for the question, David. It's an interesting question. And if I'm understanding the question right, it's like, will games that have multiple outlets, books that go along with it, comics, multiple heroes, like in Assassin's Creed, there are different characters for every single one of the games. Do those games better lend themselves to being movies and being adapted into movies than movies with a single protagonist that runs throughout a series of games, much like in Hitman? And I gotta tell you, my opinion on that is no, not in the least. Having, multiple characters and stuff like that really doesn't do anything. It all comes down to the basic fundamentals of making a film. Did you write a good story? Did you, create good dialogue? Did you create an interesting set of plot designs? Did you get good actors to work with an impeccable director? Did you get a talented director who had some vision and work with the producers to come up with an overall vision for the movie and really implement it well and all that kind of stuff? It's all the basics of filmmaking. Now, Agent 47 failed at the box office. And, I'm one of the only guys that I actually kind of liked Agent 47. I walked out of the theater the first time I saw it. I said, I kind of liked it. But one of the things that was really terrible, the reason that I think it failed was because the script was terrible. It was a bad script. Let's just call it what it is. It was a bad script. And it's tough to recover when you have a bad script. It's not totally insurmountable when you have a bad script, but man, that's a tough one. That is a tough one when you got a bad script. And, and that's what Agent 47 suffered from. And it didn't matter if you had 55, agents 1 through 75 running around, as opposed to just Agent 47. The movie wasn't going to recover from that. It just wasn't. And Assassin's Creed, it doesn't stand any better of a chance. It actually, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe in the report, they said that Michael Fassbender is actually playing a brand new character that isn't in any of the Assassin's Creed, games or mythology up to this point. It's a brand new character they're creating for the screen, if I remember reading that report right. So that kind of goes out the window a little bit. So overall, no, I don't think, whether a movie is going to be good or not has anything to do with whether the game franchise has multiple protagonists spread over several different types of media or a single protagonist spread over several games. I honestly don't think it has any impact on it at all. I think it goes right back to the basics of movie making. Just my opinion, though. Thanks a lot for the question, David. Let's move on to question number 2. And the second question today comes to us from Victor Ramsey, who writes, Hey guys, I'm a huge fan and have watched the show daily for the last year or so. Thank you so much, Victor. Really appreciate that. My question is regarding movie trailers and the creative teams behind them. I often hear you guys talk about how a trailer reveals too much or doesn't have the right tone or even, in some cases, disguises the movie's genre as something else entirely. I know the trailers are often made by a different team and the director usually signs off on it, but why don't movie studios let the director and his team create their own trailers to avoid all of these problems? Thanks, and keep up the great work. Well, thanks so much for the question, Victor. And yeah, for the most part, a lot of people, and I understand why, a lot of people are under the assumption that directors make their own trailers. They don't. They just don't. There are a very few exceptions for some who do. If I'm not mistaken, I think David Fincher gets the right. I think he puts it into his contract that he cuts his own trailers, and he's the type of director who has the gravitas that he can get that. I think Quentin Tarantino is a director who insists on cutting his own trailers, and once again, he's got the type of weight and gravitas that he can do that and he can ask for that. But I think most directors don't even want to cut their own trailers. And even if they did, studios don't want them to. Here's why. Directors in an ideal world are experts at storytelling. They're experts at filmmaking. What directors are not are experts in marketing. They're just not. That's not what they're trained in. That's not what they're trained to be or trained to do. Their expertise is not selling a film to a potential audience. That's not what their area is. That's not their expertise. Much like being a director is their expertise, but being the music composer for the film, unless you're Robert Rodriguez, but being the music composer for the film is not your expertise. You let John Williams handle that, or you let Hans handle that, or you let Michael Giacchino handle that. You let whoever you have there to take care of the music score take care of the music score. And the studio's attitude, understandably so, is your job is to direct the film, make the best film you possibly can. We have people who are experts in marketing films, and we will let them. Because at the end of the day, the studio's got to sell the movie to the public. They got to sell it. If you can make the best movie in the world, but if you don't convince the public to come and see it, you're never going to make another movie. And that's just kind of the position that studios are in. And I agree with it. Directors are not marketing experts. And I'll say this too. I love Quentin Tarantino's movies, so just seeing a trailer for a Quentin Tarantino movie is great. But I can't think of any Quentin Tarantino trailers that blew my socks off in and of themselves. I mean, I think I get really excited at trailers just because I know it's a Quentin Tarantino movie and I know what to expect out of it. But, he's not a marketing expert. And, and that's fine, whatever. To find that he makes his own, David Fincher makes his own. That's all cool. Nothing wrong with that either, because maybe they have a particular gift and skill for that. But the studio, there's a couple things too. By the time they're putting out the first trailers, the director should be focusing on finishing their movie. At that point, they should be well into the post-production process and really focus on putting the final touches on the movie. A studio doesn't want them using their time and their mental energy about how do I cut a trailer together when they should be over there fixing all the last-minute problems on the major film. So I think that's pretty much why, studios don't let directors cut their own trailers, because the studios have experts who know how to market films. And B, I agree with the studio. I mean, it would be the same thing, like I said, if Steven Spielberg throwing out John Williams saying, I'm going to compose this because I'm the director. I know the movie better than anybody else, so I can compose the score. No, let's trust the people who have expertise in their areas to do it. And most of the time, trailers are great. Sometimes trailers are not so great. But more times than not, I end up usually liking more trailers than I dislike. So I kind of like the status quo. Go figure. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what your opinion is. Thanks a lot for the question. All right. The third question today comes to us from Joe Stevens, who writes, Hey guys, love the show. Thanks so much, Joe. My question's about Magic Camp, the Disney movie that reportedly had Steve Martin attached to it. What's up with it? I haven't heard anything about it since last year when Martin was cast. Since 2011's The Big Year, we haven't seen much of Martin, apart from the voice role in Home. And I'm dying to see more of one of the greatest comedic actors of all time. Thanks, and keep bringing the filthy. Dude, you are preaching to the choir. Steve Martin is a genius. He's a great actor. He's a great entertainer. He's a great host at the Oscars. The dude can just do it all. And I remember, I don't know if you guys follow me on Facebook, and if you don't, you should. Just follow me at John Campia. But I recently posted on my Facebook page this great video from maybe 6 months ago or a year ago of Steve Martin with his band on The Late Show, just playing his banjo. And the dude, I know this is a weird word to attribute to banjo playing, but the dude shredded. He was shredding that thing up. It was amazing. Not just good for some guy who's an actor who can also pick up. He's freaking talented. He is great. And him with his band were on Letterman just playing this blue, I guess I call bluegrass, I don't know, playing this, and it was fantastic. And I know he was touring with the band. I know he played around here not too long ago. And you're right, since the Big Year, he hasn't done a lot of movies since he's been focusing a lot on his music, and I think a lot on his writing too. And maybe just taking a break. And, let's face it, the Big Year was not all that good. And so maybe he wanted to step away, whatever. But then came the announcement for that movie Magic Camp. And a bunch of us got really excited just because it's got Steve Martin attached to it. But nothing has been announced since. I think it went into limbo. And we haven't seen any progression on the movie, heard any more things. Matter of fact, I don't think it has a release date at all. I haven't seen any more movement. I don't know that a director ever got attached to it. As far as I know, the project is dead. Now, that being said, Steve Martin does have a movie coming up called Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. And it's got a lot of people excited. It has to do with this young kid who's a war hero being really promoted by the president, being sent on this promotional tour across the country to raise national morale for the military. And I think he's going to he's at a big football game where him and a few of his comrades are going to be honored at halftime. And then the next day he's supposed to get back on a plane and go back to war zone. And that's the movie, if I understand it right. Steve Martin plays one of the guys in it. Obviously, he's not Billy Lynn. He's not the young soldier. So I'm not sure what his role in it is, but he's pretty highly billed. So it's got to be a significant role. I'm really looking forward to Martin in that. And let's just keep our eyes open and hope he starts doing more movies as soon as that one's done, once he gets the bluegrass music thing out of his veins a little bit. All right, let's move on to the fourth question today. And the fourth question today comes to us from Craig Weiss. And Craig Weiss writes, "Hi, Collider crew from Melbourne, Australia." Well, how you doing, Craig? As a matter of fact, our own John Schnepp was just in Australia. There promoting his film, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, to some sold-out crowds, if I remember correctly. And he loved it, by the way. He keeps talking to me about it. Anyway, I recently read some quotes that get me a little bit worried with regards to the DC Cinematic Universe. After the Warner Brothers executives saw Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, they have decided to center their universe around Batman. If this is the case, what happens to Man of Steel 2 and the other hero movies? I'm concerned that all we'll get is another Dark Knight-style trilogy with other heroes as support-style characters only. Any thoughts? And a big Aussie thanks. Keep up the great work. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Craig. This all comes from that report that came out a while ago. And we addressed this on Movie Talk. Sorry, guys. My eyes are starting to bug out because of the giant monitors here. So I try to do this without the glasses, but I got to get the glasses back on here. This all stems from that report that came out a while ago. Remember that the executives of Warner Brothers saw Batman vs. Superman and gave it a standing ovation, to which me and Christian and Mark were like, that's like saying John Campea took a poop and he gave himself a 10 out of 10 for his poop. Anyway, that's going to be a hashtag now. Hashtag 10 out of 10 poop. Anyway, so I actually know somebody at Warner Brothers who said that screening never actually happened. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. For all I know, it's just that they weren't aware of it or weren't around it. It very well could have happened. And you have to assume that at some point, the Warner Brothers executives are going to be screening the film. That just makes sense. So let's say that it did, because I think there's a very good chance that it did. So let's say that happened. Now, the other thing came out of that report that wasn't as talked about was that the Warner Brothers executives were so impressed with Ben Affleck as Batman. They were now calling him the quintessential Batman. He is the definitive Batman, they were saying. Remember, this is the same studio that had Christian Bale as Batman. And now this same studio is saying, no, Ben Affleck is the definitive Batman. So that's interesting that they're saying that. And that they've decided to focus now the Warner Brothers DC Cinematic Universe around Batman because of that one screening. I have a very hard time believing that for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, they already had their movies planned. Wonder Woman is going into production here pretty soon. So, that's already on the books. They got their script. They're ready to go. They've already got their plans for their one. They've already got their plans for Justice League 1 and Justice League 2 and all that kind of stuff. They've already got their thing planned out. It's not like they're sitting around going, gee, I wonder if we'll do another movie after Batman versus Superman. Oh, this movie is great. Okay, now let's plan some more movies. No, they've already, the whole thing's in motion already. But the other thing that makes me completely not believe that rumor, if you will, is the fact that would be the height of stupidity. That after watching one movie We go, let's base our entire cinematic universe around this one thing. Now, everybody knows I have been a big supporter of Ben Affleck as Batman since day one that they announced it. I've been a huge supporter of him, and I think he's going to make a great Batman. But that being said, it doesn't matter how good Ben Affleck does in one movie. It's one movie, and you don't alter the course of your entire cinematic universe just to fit it and wrap it around one character. What I do believe is going to happen is, since Batman is by far the most popular character that Warner Brothers has in their DC lineup, I personally think that they have always planned to have Batman at least show up in all their movies. And maybe he will be the thread that ties all the films together. But I don't think it's going to be a major presence. I think it's going to be more like what we're going to see in Suicide Squad. We know Batman makes an appearance in Suicide Squad, but he's not in much of the movie. So I think that's probably going to be the blueprint that we see throughout. I think Batman will be the thread that ties it all together, much like Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 was the thread that kind of tied all the other Marvel movies together. I think Batman is going to kind of play that role. And that, I think, will be about the result of it. I think that'll be the end of it. I think that'll also be the extent of it. I don't think it's going to go much beyond that. I just don't think the people Warner Brothers are that stupid. So anyway, just my opinion, just my thoughts. I'd like to know what you guys think. All right, let's now move on to question number 5. And question number 5 today comes to us from Ben Vazian, who writes, I went back and watched your D23 episode with a buddy of mine, and a thought came to me. I feel like they miscast Baloo for Jon Favreau's Jungle Book. Don't get me wrong, I love Bill Murray, but for some reason I don't feel he fits. So I asked my buddy who he thinks should have played Baloo, and he guessed it, John Goodman. So my question, have there been any movies you felt miscast a role or two before its release? Well, thanks a lot for the question, Ben. And you know what? I am absolutely with you. I love Bill Murray. He's awesome in just about everything. And when I heard that Bill Murray was doing the voice of Baloo in Jon Favreau's Jungle Book, I was very excited. Now, then me, Christian Mark, we went to D23 and we watched Jon Favreau give this big presentation and watched a bunch of footage and this kind of sizzle trailer, if you will, for Jungle Book. And it stole the show. The Jungle Book stole the show at D23. Not the Captain America Civil War footage, not the makeshift trailer for Doctor Strange, certainly not the Star Wars presentation, which didn't do anything. Jungle Book stole the show at D23. And I never, if you had told me that before going into that hall at D23, that Jungle Book was going to be the big star of it, I would have laughed in your face, but it absolutely was. This movie is going to be spectacular. Anyway, it's got some great voice talent in there. Bing Kingsley is doing some of the voice talent. Scarlett Johansson is doing it. And a lot of great names, a lot of great voices. But then Baloo, the bear, came on. And Baloo's being voiced by Bill Murray. And I got to tell you, it did not fit. This isn't a question of talent. Bill Murray is super talented. But no matter how talented you are, like even Daniel Day-Lewis, who is the greatest actor in the world, probably won't fit very well in a Judd Apatow, Seth Rogen comedy. It's just probably not a good fit. And hearing all the voices and seeing the kid who's playing Mowgli in it with all these other creatures and how they're being voiced, and Shere Khan, voiced by Idris Elba, is spectacular. Sounds awesome. And then you hear Bill Murray as Baloo, and you know, it's going to be subjective. Maybe it'll work for you, but I got to tell you, for me, it didn't work. It felt out of place. And so I've got to agree with you on that. Now, as far as your question goes about have I ever felt like a movie was miscast? Well, I mean, I think every third movie that we see coming out, before we see it, but we hear announcements or we see trailers, probably 1 out of every 3 or every 4, we all think, oh, that guy doesn't fit well in that movie. It'd probably be better if it was so-and-so, or if so-and-so is out. So that's way too broad of a question for me to really be able to answer. I mean, yes, I always feel that certain actors in certain roles are miscast. We all do. That's just the nature of it. But getting back to Jungle Book for a second, I think I mentioned this on Movie Talk, but I'm not sure. The voice that really stood out to me as hilarious, the entire auditorium at D23 just started laughing their heads off when King Louie, I think he's an orangutan, the big King Louie shows up, and he's voiced by Christopher Walken. And I do a horrible Christopher Walken, but, Mowgli's like, "Who are you?" And, King Louie looks down, "Me? I'm the king." That's a terrible Christopher Walken. But imagine that, what I just said, in a totally Christopher Walken voice. That was it. Whole audience erupted in laughter. It was great. I cannot wait to see this movie. It was hardly on my radar before going to D23. Hardly on my radar at all. And yet now it's kind of all I can think about. I can't wait for this movie to come out. Anyway, thanks for the question. Let's move on to the next one. And the next one today comes to us from Sergio Santamaria, who writes, "I'm a recent but dedicated fan of your show." Well, thank you so much, Sergio. Appreciate that. "I enjoy how thoroughly you cover each week's wide release films, but I was wondering if you guys are also fans of smaller, more independent films. For example, Z for Zachariah is being released soon in limited release, but I haven't heard a review from you guys yet of that film. I know that you guys are film buffs, but why aren't movies like this being covered on the show?" Well, thanks a lot for the question, Sergio. And I'm really glad you brought this up because this issue is actually a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. A lot of people will sometimes say to us, "You guys don't talk about smaller films." Well, as a matter of fact, we do. Let's take, for example, Z for Zachariah that you just brought up. On no fewer than 3 episodes of Movie Talk, 3 separate episodes of Movie Talk, we discussed Z for Zachariah. 3 times. Now, we haven't done a movie review of Z for Zachariah, but during its development phase and the announcements and, first trailers and stuff like that, we have done stories on Z for Zachariah. We have talked about Z for Zachariah on no fewer than 3 occasions. We have not done a review for Z for Zachariah for a couple of reasons. But the most important of those reasons was none of us ever got an invitation to a press screening. I'll be honest, I don't know that I'm sure there were press screenings, but there were certainly not any big mass press screenings, and none that we were invited to. And we get invited to most films, but this was not. And to call Z for Zachariah a limited release is being generous. I can't. I think it certainly released in less than 3 digits. Less than 3 digits of theaters across the country, maybe even less. And then it went straight to video. It's already on home video. You can stream it now. So it was a very small, not really meant to be a big theatrical release. And maybe that's one of the reasons we didn't get invited to do a press screening of it. So that's the primary reason we didn't do a review of the film. We didn't get a chance to see it before it came out. Nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. But, if you're going to ask why didn't we do a review, that's why we didn't do a review. But like I said, there's a lot of indie films. Like, we do 8 topics a day on Movie Talk. 8 topics a day. And a lot of time, one of the big things I constantly hear from people, and I've just given up. I've totally given up trying to respond to it. That a lot of people say, all you do is talk about comic book movies. And I'll go, I used to respond to people. I go, really? Because we covered 9 topics today, and 2 of them were comic book movies. So if by all you do is comic book movies, you mean like 22% of the time, then I guess. Comic book movies are the most prolific, biggest, and most popular genre of film in the world today. They are. They're the biggest movies, they're most prolific genre. Everybody talks about them. About 9 out of 10 mailbag questions that get sent to us are about comic book movies. And if you'll notice in mailbag, we might take 2 out of 8 questions that we take on mailbag. We might take 2. And I'm sure there have been episodes where we took 3, and I know there have been episodes where we had 1. But there's this perception that all we do is talk about comic book movies. And I just encourage you, if you ever think that, look down how many topics we covered that day, and then count how many. You'll never find it 50%. Very, very rarely we find it 50%, unless it's like a special episode where, the episode where, Marvel did their big announcement day in Hollywood where they announced their full lineup and all that kind of stuff. And we did 1 full episode on that. Or, when Ben Affleck was announced as Batman, we did 1 full episode of that. But for the most part, it'll always be the minority of stories that we cover, but also with the independent films too. It's like, I think, obviously we headline with the big movie news, like with the Ghostbusters, with Star Wars, with Justice League or Batman or whatever. Sure, we headline, or Jurassic World, we headline with those. But if you really pay attention, we do talk about a lot of smaller films. And by the time those films come out, we've talked about them 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So I would say that, you know what, we do cover, we're not an indie specific show like Indie Spotlight used to be. We're not that. But I think we do give a fair shake to indie films. We don't put them on the same level as big wide release films because you guys watch the big wide release films. So we spend more of our time on that. And that's a decision that we made. Some people might disagree with our approach. Some people may agree, but that is the decision that we made to do it that way. But we do talk about those films. And like I said, in the specific example, Z for Zachariah, no fewer than 3 times was that a topic on Movie Talk. So I'm really glad that you brought up that issue. It gave me a chance to address it. Thanks so much for the question. All right, 2 questions left for today's show. And the second last question of the day comes to us from Ghazi Al-Quinai, who writes, "Hello, John. Short and simple question. I like it. Jack Reacher versus John Wick. Who will win? Thanks, and keep up the great work." I get into this debate with Christian every once in a while. We'll discuss and debate Jack Reacher. I really like Jack Reacher. I didn't just like it. I really liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it and it's on one of my all-time favorite movies. Nothing like that. But I really like Jack Reacher, the Tom Cruise movie. I thought it was really fun. I thought the character was really interesting. And by the time that movie was over, I was looking forward to a sequel. Now, granted, it didn't have the strongest third act. Actually, I think the first half of the third act was pretty good, but it didn't end strong. I give it that. But there was so much of the movie that I thought was so good. I liked it. And I thought the Jack Reacher character was badass. I really liked him. I really enjoyed him. But John Wick, the boogeyman, John Wick was on another level. I loved that film. And that whole style that Keanu Reeves started calling gun fu in that movie, the style of it and everything, so spectacular visually to watch. I just ate it up. And so if you're asking me, and now I know the question is not which movie did I like better, but who wins? Jack Reacher versus John Wick. Who wins that fight? You got to go with John Wick. That's just the way he's written. He is the boogeyman. He is the guy who will take out an entire mob on his own. That when you hear this one guy is coming for you, the Russian mob trembles in fear. Like that's what John Wick is. And that's what kind of made it so cool. And man, has there ever been a cuter puppy in a movie than in John Wick? I submit that there has not been a cuter puppy than in John Wick. Anyway, so yeah, my personal opinion, Jack Reacher versus John Wick wins. But I want to know what you think. Jump into the comment section and let us know who you think wins that fight, Jack Reacher or John Wick. All right, now with that out of the way, we get to the final question of the day. And the final question today goes to Michael Crane. And Michael writes, "Huge fan of your show." Well, thank you so much, Michael. "With most of this year's films played out on the big screen, it would appear that there are only 2 frontrunners for the title of #1 opening weekend and overall box office of the year: Star Wars versus Jurassic World. Do you think Star Wars can surpass Jurassic World and take either of these 2 titles? Or do you think the Jurassic World can lean back and enjoy an early victory? Thanks so much, and bring on the filthy." Well, thanks so much, Michael. Well, we've been talking a lot lately on Jedi Council and on Movie Talk about, can Star Wars Force Awakens set the new opening weekend box office record? And you know that I've already said I do not believe it can. Not because it's not going to be good enough, but because people don't rush out opening weekend in December. I've mentioned it before, I mentioned it again. The all-time biggest opening weekend box office in December was The Hobbit at $84 million. That's the record. So now I believe that Star Wars The Force Awakens is going to annihilate that record. I really do. But keep in mind, it is December. It is winter in a lot of places in the country. And it's Christmas coming up. People are broke. They've spent all their money on Christmas presents and things like that. They're traveling, they're on vacation or whatever. I mean, there's just so many things going on in December that the best I could ever, I mean, you think about the Hobbit films. You think about the Lord of the Rings films. You know how popular those movies are. None of them open to $80 million. Lord of the Rings films are easily $120 million opening weekend films if they open any other time of the year other than December. Now, I do believe that The Force Awakens is going to kick major box office ass in its opening weekend, but I think you got to set a more realistic goal. It's not going to hit $220 million. I really don't think so. I'm going to be really shocked if it does. Anything is possible. I'll be totally shocked if it does. I think a more realistic big goal is $150 million. Pretty much double the existing record. If you double the existing record, that's a big, big day. So I don't think it can catch Jurassic World as far as being the biggest opening weekend. However, can it beat it overall? Yes. I'm not going to predict that it will. I'll say it's 50-50. It absolutely can beat Jurassic Park overall. By the time Star Wars The Force Awakens run is finished, I believe it can. Now, that also really depends a lot on, is the movie any good? Like, the movie's going to make a lot of money regardless of if it's good or not. It's going to make a ton of money regardless if it's good or not. But for it to make enough money to pass Jurassic World and become the number 3 all-time box office film, it's going to also have to be good and get a lot of people going back multiple times and bringing their friends to go see it with them. And so we just simply don't know yet. I mean, I like the way it's shaping up. I think it looks fantastic so far, but we're going to have to wait and see how that all shapes up. All right, folks, that will do it for this installment of Mailbag. Thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday. Once again, don't forget, there is no Mailbag tomorrow for the long weekend. I am taking some time off. I'm going to head out of town. So thank you so much for giving me that break. Really appreciate it. And just remember, too, if you want to get your question on Mailbag on the weekends or on Movie Talk Monday through Friday, take a shot and email us at collidervideo@gmail.com. Send in your questions. We can't answer all of them, but we'll get to as many as we can, so send that in. And as a personal plug, once again, go to my Facebook page or follow me on Twitter and find the Kickstarter for The Pride. Or just go to Kickstarter.com and search for The Pride and support me getting my first novel out there. Thank you so much in advance for your support. So listen, don't forget, make sure you follow Collider. Become a fan of Collider on Facebook. Just go on Facebook, search for Collider, find us there. Make sure you're following us on Facebook. And most importantly, click subscribe, become a subscriber to our YouTube channel to keep you up to date with all the great stuff going on at Collider Video, from Movie Talk and Mailbag, Heroes to Jedi Council, now all of our TV stuff that's coming. Can't wait to introduce you to our new crew that's going to be joining us for that. We're really excited. So, and don't forget too, you can follow me on Facebook and on Twitter, simply at John Campia. That's the easiest way to find me. So that'll do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. So until next time, I'm John Campia. Bye-bye.